My name is Zahoor. I'm a solutions engineer in Modern Applications Business Unit, and I cover the Tanzu portfolio. So Tanzu portfolio of Kubernetes and modern applications platforms. What I want to talk to you about today is basically the concept of a modern application. So we have basically, there is a prediction that by 2024, 53% or more will be what we call the modern applications, the cloud native applications, right? These applications are architecturally very different from how applications are built today, right? Today we talk about monolithic applications, scale-up applications, which are difficult to operate and update and upgrade over time. These are basically what we call cloud native applications, which are elastic in nature and which are distributed, right? So what do we mean by that? Now, in order to bring these cloud native applications and architecture in your own data center, in your own premises, what you're really looking to do is to bring a number of transformations, what we call the keys to transformation, right? To bring these modern applications. How do we do that? The first one is focused on the idea of infrastructure transformation. Infrastructure transformation means you're establishing software-defined data center in your organization. So you're looking at virtualization, you're looking at network virtualization, you are looking at abstraction of security controls, you're looking at automation of how you provision your infrastructure. This is the first part. The second thing is you're looking at a DevSecOps transformation. A DevSecOps transformation means how do you collaborate between the developers, the operations team, and the security team? So there are obviously some practices, there are some best practices, there is some communication, but then there's also a lot of technical components, the tools that you use to provide these DevSecOps transformation. That's the second part. The third is the application transformation itself. The application transformation is focused on building these applications from scratch using the agile 12-factor applications. So you build these applications differently now, right? The next 2 points are around how do you provide observability. Observability is a bit different from monitoring. Here you are looking at the key metrics of every component of your application, and you are looking at in real time how this application is responding. So you look for latency at the application level, any specific metric, all the way down to infrastructure components. So you can pinpoint what is causing something to slow down, what is causing application to slow down. You can go and work on specifically on that point. The next is access to data. And these are not your traditional SQL databases. These are not your monolithic old school databases. These are modern distributed databases, NoSQL databases, highly distributed in nature, and you need to provide a path from your application down to this database. And in many cases, you are looking at these microservices accessing these modern databases over a large, widespread region. So we need to look at all of these different factors from infrastructure down to access to data to build this whole, platform for modern applications. At the heart of this technology, at the heart of this transformation, you have three key things, right? First is the microservices. So you are not building monolithic applications. Now you're building microservices applications, so distributed. Second is the container format, because you are going to take these microservices, instead of putting them in virtual machines, you're now going to package them inside what's called containers or Docker containers. And the third is the multi-cloud, because in today's world, everything is distributed. So you have applications running on-premise, on vSphere, you have applications running in Azure Cloud, you have applications running in AWS and Google Cloud. So you need a solution to run these modern applications across these different types of cloud providers. Now, in order to get the benefit of this modernization, application modernized, there are a number of ways, there's what we call the 5 key transformations. So first is, how do you categorize the application itself? How? Okay, you can't hear me? Okay, is it better now? Is it better now? Okay. I hope you were able to listen to me. I've been talking. So we have these, application what we call modernization strategy, right? There are basically 5 things you can do with an application. If you have an existing application, you can, retire it over time if you think it's not a good candidate for modernization, right? There is also something that is business critical, mission critical, but it will not benefit from modernization, so you retain it as it is. Then there's the rehost, remigration, and replatforming of applications. These are applications that are critical to your business. You will benefit from replatforming, providing a model platform under these applications. So this is one aspect of it. However, you will see that the biggest value that you can derive from these transformations is when you rebuild and refactor this application into something called microservices. So your most business critical, your most mission critical applications, where you can get the most value from, this is that space, right? You can see this curve here. And this is what we're really focusing on here, right? So we're providing you a modern platform here. We are providing you a modern platform from certain technologies to build these modern applications. Now, in any organization, you have something like this. Every organization has that who are building software. They have a path to production. In many cases, this path to production for customers takes many months. If you want to release software, put it in the hands of your users, you're looking at maybe 6 months or 1 year time before you can put an application into production. So this is the process from an idea all the way until it is running in production. We want to take and shorten this thing, the time. If it takes 1 year, it takes 6 months, we want to bring it down to weeks, days, and in many cases, even hours. So you have an idea, you develop your software, you click a button, and it goes into production for you, right? This is what we're looking at. Anything we do with Tanzu is always focused on the path to production. How can we minimize the time to put an application into production? That's our goal, right, with all of our technology. So if you look at the Kubernetes and modern application platforms and space, it's a very busy space. There are lots of tools available to you from which you can make a choice and use them. So how do we build a consistent developer experience on such an open source, open source technologies? And this is what we're going to talk about next. What we're really going to focus on is the application that you are building, right? In the past, this is what an architecture looked like. It was embedded within the mainframes. We moved to a client server model where you had some sort of virtualization and you had your application code. However, the developers, the people building the software, were spending a lot of time providing the infrastructure for the application itself, all the components. This is changing very fast now. As we go to a microservices architecture, we go to a more agile software development practices, the platform is going to provide you all of these capabilities automatically. And what you're focusing on is only your intellectual property, your innovation, what is unique to your business. That's what you're focusing on. And this is what we are doing with Tanzu portfolio, right? We're giving you capabilities and services to build your application at this level. And we will take care of all the different layers below this. So in a nutshell, this is what it looks like. We have different types of clouds, doesn't matter, on-premise, off-premise, public cloud. We have a Kubernetes layer on top. Again, it doesn't matter. It can be Tanzu Kubernetes Grid. It can be any Kubernetes. And then we have an application platform on top. And this application platform is what we're interested in because this allows us to build these modern applications. Here we have very strong defaults. So the platform has an opinion. You give it your source code, the source code of the application. It's going to take the source code of the application, convert it into a container image for you, provide all the wiring, networking, routing, ingress controllers, all sorts of things to make this application usable and put it in the hands of your customers faster. So we are going from 0 to 100. Instead of 6 months, we might be doing it in a few minutes now. And this is what this application platform is doing for you. So it's very consistent. It's very abstracted from the underlying infrastructures. And this is where the value is for you. As a customer, if you're building software, this is where the value is for you. So the developer productivity, the developer experience on this Kubernetes platform. Essentially what we're doing is, we are taking the needs of the developer and what they do on a day-to-day basis. We're taking the needs of the operations teams and what they need to do on a day-to-day basis. So, consistency of the infrastructure. How do you maintain your infrastructure? From a developer perspective, the speed of deployment, and we merge them. we bring them together somehow on this platform. How do we do that? The Tanzu portfolio gives you 3 key capabilities. Number 1, building modern software. This is purely focused on software development teams. An infrastructure, a modern infrastructure to run your Kubernetes. So this is where you are going to run these applications, and a way to monitor and manage and do service discovery for your applications. So this is that management part here, right? So let's zoom in on this a little bit. Somebody was very excited about my presentation, so that's awesome. So this is, if I zoom in on this now, the build pillar here is got all the development tools to build this modern software, right? You have the Spring framework, if you're building Java applications, you have Steeltoe if you're building .NET applications, and a whole bunch of other tools here that help you in building these modern software. And we have a lot of integrations. We have the build service here to go from source code to container image, to Docker container image. We have Tanzu application catalog, which is an open source repo of open source software, which is curated and signed images. We have the Tanzu data services, so Postgres, MySQL, in-memory databases such as Gemfire, Greenplum. All of those are covered over here. RabbitMQ, for example, for message queues. And then we have Tanzu application platform. And this is what I was talking about earlier, how to go from 0 to 100 in 2 seconds instead of 6 months. This is what it lets you do. It gives you a strong default, a complete platform, which takes the source code on one side and brings the application on the other side running on a Kubernetes cluster. We have Kubernetes clusters here, and they can run anywhere. They can run on vSphere, they can run on VCF, vCloud Foundation, they can run on VMware Cloud on Amazon, they can run on public cloud like Azure, AWS, they can run on the edge with a smaller footprint. So you have a choice of where you're going to host your infrastructure. We have management capabilities. The management is basically 3 things. They have Wavefront. It's basically a time series data analytics tool. It can ingest millions of data points per second from your application. It can analyze it. It can look for what's causing latency in the application response. This is what this service does. We have Service Mesh. Service Mesh is amazing because I can take my application and I can distribute it all across the world. I can put some service in the US, I can put some service in London, I can put some service in Dubai, and I can connect them. Let me show you. This is Tanzu Service Mesh. So I have a cluster. This is Mission Control. I have a cluster in London, vSphere cluster. I have a cluster in Dubai. Okay, this is inside Dubai. These are vSphere clusters. You can see vSphere here. This is sitting in a cluster in Ohio in the US. And this is sitting in a cluster in Oregon, in the US, in California. And these are sitting in AWS, right? So there were 4 clusters here. And I can show you, if I go deeper into this thing, you will see that this one is, for example, AWS provision, and you can see where this is. This is US East 2, all right? So this is Ohio, right? The other one is in, now my clusters are distributed in Dubai, London, and the US in 2 places. I can take my application and I can distribute this application across these clusters. So this is basically Service Mesh. So I've got different services here, they're all connected to each other. And I've got a catalog here, which is a database. And these are distributed in different environments. So this one is sitting in London and this one is sitting in Dubai, right? And I can monitor my application response of between different microservices and see what's going on. So I can go here and I can see, okay, how is my order processing going? And I can see the performance of this here, of this particular service here. If I find that there's a performance issue, I can shift it. I can, within 1 second, I can shift it from London to Ohio, for example. Okay, with 1 second delay, the user will not know that the application has, changed its cluster completely. If I go to cluster overview, you will see these clusters here, all of them. So this one, for example, is sitting in Dubai. This one is in this one is sitting here in this one is in London, and then these 2 first clusters are sitting inside Ohio and Oregon. If I click on this cluster, you can see the what's going on inside this cluster and how is the performance. So I can even look at the performance. It will give me exactly what is going on with this application. So as a site reliability engineer, as somebody who's managing this application, I can view this and I can decide there's a response, delay. I can shift my service to another cluster just by one click. This is what this type of architecture looks like at scale. Coming back to my presentation. So these things are basically, working together to give you that kind of agility in moving your microservices around. So what we are doing from an application development perspective is basically giving you an end-to-end automation. So right from the time you create your application in a source code, you build your application into container images, you provide some, image registry where you store these images, and all the way to testing, performing, applying policies on these applications. Ultimately, you have a modern application that is delivered in the hands of your users, right? I'm going to fast forward and show you the, sorry. So what we have done now in terms of infrastructure is we have built this type of architecture for you. We have physical servers, which is SDDC. On top of this, we create Kubernetes clusters. We create namespaces. These namespaces are basically a logical way of representing your application. So you create a namespace and you put parts of your application inside that namespace. This is how you manage a CPU, memory, storage, quotas on that application. And this is the job of what we call the VI admin. Once you've gone one step further, you make it accessible to your DevOps teams. And here they can then deploy their applications and they can create Kubernetes clusters on demand. So they can create a pod on demand, they can a virtual machine on demand, and they can create a complete Kubernetes clusters on demand. This is exact. It depends on the use cases that you have, right? But you have all three possibilities, okay? And this is how we manage this Tanzu Kubernetes grid on a vSphere platform. This can be AWS as well. This part here can be in Amazon, Azure as well. It doesn't matter. What we build on top is always consistent with the automation and the agility we were talking about. So this leaves me with these layers. So you have your infrastructure, you have your security, you have your Kubernetes management plane, you have your Kubernetes clusters, you have your workload VMs, and then ultimately you have your application on top. Okay, and then it basically you look at the different teams which are responsible for managing such an infrastructure for you, right? How are we with time? Are we over time already? I think we are, yeah? Okay. So in order to introduce this concept to you, to bring Tanzu Kubernetes Grid to you, what have we done? Well, one of the easiest way to experiment and play with this is to get the Tanzu Community Edition, right? And Tanzu Community Edition lets you deploy the Tanzu Kubernetes Grid free of charge. There are no restrictions, there are no license restrictions, there are no usage restrictions, no feature restrictions. You can run entire Kubernetes platform with all of these open source tooling in your data center on as many clusters and servers as you want, okay? This is a community edition, open source software, free of charge. If you decide that you're going to put it into production and you need support for it, then you can go for one of the commercial editions of Tanzu Kubernetes Grid. So there's basic, standard, or advanced, right? But you can get started with this today with all of this open source software. If you need to, if you want to learn more about this, there are lots of resources on the internet. I would urge you to make a note of this. This is cube.academy. So this is a place where you can learn more about Kubernetes, more about modern application platforms, modern applications, networking, etc. You also have something called Tanzu Developer Center. You can go to tanzu.vmware.com. A lot of online, online labs you can play with to figure out how we build these microservices. We have something called, Modern Apps Ninja. Let me show you that. Modern Apps Ninja is specifically for products which are part of Tanzu portfolio. So Tanzu Mission Control, Tanzu Service Mesh, Tanzu Kubernetes Grid. You have a lot of online courses here. You can go and check this out as well. And then we have the hands-on labs. The hands-on labs have a lot of these this one is in more detail. So usually 90 minutes to 2 hours to 3 hour labs. So you can play with our software by logging into hands-on labs, right? And this brings me to basically the end. And if any of you have any questions, please feel free to ask me. And I'm here on the Tanzu booth, so you can